The notice wasn't mailed. It was nailed, sloppily, almost angrily, straight through the cedar of Ethan Wolfe's front door. He paused mid-step, grocery bag crinkling in one hand, and stared at the crude sheet flapping in the wind. Thick red letters bled across the page. Violation. Unauthorized energy collector. Fine, $500. Due immediately, remedy. Remove installation within 72 hours. He blinked. Energy collector, he muttered. His eyes flicked upward toward the sleek array of solar panels he had spent 3 weeks designing, sourcing, and meticulously installing. They were recessed to stay below the roofline, triple-checked against Whispering Pines' public-facing HOA guidelines. Permits filed. Inspections passed. He ripped the paper down and scanned it again. No signature, no seal, just the HOA's name. Whispering Pines Neighborhood Harmony Council. And a vague threat of escalating legal action if he failed to comply with the agreed-upon covenant. Agreed upon. That phrasing stuck like a splinter. Inside, he tossed the groceries onto the counter and pulled up the HOA handbook he'd downloaded when he first bought the house. Section 14C. External modifications. Nothing about solar panels. In fact, a clause even encouraged energy-efficient upgrades where reasonable and discreet. He leaned back, cracked his knuckles, and smirked. They're gonna regret waking up an engineer. By 10 p.m., Ethan had cross-referenced the violation notice with county records, municipal energy policy, and 5 different versions of the Whispering Pines HOA bylaws archived over the last 5 years. There was no mention of restrictions on solar panels in any official version, but then something caught his eye. A new section labeled 14C7, Atmospheric Impact Structures, appeared in a version, time-stamped just 2 months ago. It used language so vague, it could ban anything from wind chimes to skylights. The clause didn't exist in any prior version, and more importantly, it had no digital signature, no HOA vote log, no record of approval. He pulled up the document, properties, and examined the metadata. Author, G. Vickers, Grant, Ethan said under his breath. His neighbor across the street, balding, thick glasses, spent more time power walking than breathing. He was also, if Ethan recalled correctly, the HOA treasurer, and the only board member who hadn't greeted Ethan since he moved in. As if on cue, a movement caught his eye through the blinds. Across the street, someone stood just beyond the reach of the street lamp. They raised a phone, pointed it at Ethan's roof, and clicked a photo. Then again, then another. Ethan stepped back into the shadows of his living room and let the blinds fall. The next morning, his inbox had a fresh message. Subject: Second violation warning. Escalation. Pending attached was a blurry photo of his house. The same photo from the night before. This time, the tone was colder. The fine had doubled, but Ethan didn't delete the email. He saved it. He also started building something else, not just legal documentation or appeal letters, something bigger, something he'd been sketching since the first day the panels went up. Something they'd never see coming. As the sun rose behind his solar array, Ethan watched the shadows stretch long across his yard. In the distance, the faint squeak of sneakers on asphalt echoed. Grant was power walking again. Ethan smiled, without humor. Let's play. Ethan wasn't paranoid. He was methodical, which made it worse when the world started bending toward the strange. 2 days after the second violation notice, his internet slowed to a crawl. Websites took minutes to load. Emails bounced, and his smart security system started lagging. The solar monitoring dashboard, which normally ran live updates, froze entirely. He ran a full diagnostic. No hardware issues. No local interference. But the ping test showed something strange. His outgoing data was being routed through a private proxy server. He didn't like that. At exactly 3:17 p.m., someone knocked on the door. 3 quick raps. He glanced through the peephole. No one. He opened it slowly, cautiously. A flyer lay on the welcome mat. One of those cheap black and white ones with pull tabs at the bottom. Neighborhood Clean and Quiet Committee. Stop unapproved. Modifications. Below the bold text was a picture of his house. Solar panels circled in red. The caption read, "It starts with panels. It ends with chaos." Most of the pull tabs were already gone. He shut the door, locked it, then drew every curtain in the house. That night, as the sky turned violet and the sun vanished behind the pines, Ethan noticed something on his motion cam feed. A figure loitering by his mailbox. The person wore a hoodie, too tall and lean to be Grant, and carried a clipboard. They seemed to be writing something. Then they slid an envelope into the box and walked briskly away. He waited until the figure disappeared before retrieving it. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single typed sentence. "No one fights. The Borden wins. Not since the Crowley case. No other details. No signature. Just the warning. Plain and clinical." He tore through the county archive that night. No mention of any Crowley case in Whispering Pines. No record of a homeowner named Crowley in the last 20 years. But one news clipping from 2009 caught his eye. Local engineer leaves town after unexplained fire destroys home. There was a blurry photo, scorched concrete, melted beams. No direct address, no name. But the background looked familiar. A hill, a pine line, the edge of the Whispering Pines development. And a whisper of guilt stirred in Ethan's mind. Was this fire really random? Or a warning shot? The next morning, as he walked to retrieve his trash bins from the curb, a neighbor caught his eye. Sandra, from 2 houses down. Elderly, soft-spoken, rarely outside except for gardening. She paused, looked both ways, then shuffled toward him. "There, watching you." She whispered without preamble. "Who is?" She hesitated. "The board. The real board." "You mean Grant and his jogging mafia?" "No." Her voice lowered even further. "I mean the ones behind them. The ones who send the edits." Grant just signs. He waited, but she said no more. Instead, she slipped something into his hand. A faded Polaroid. It showed a young couple, standing in front of what looked like Ethan's house. Behind them, a partially built windmill. Is this? But she was already walking away, fast for her age. "You didn't get that from me." He flipped the photo over. On the back, in jagged ink, "Don't repeat our mistake. The wind doesn't just turn blades. It stirs the wrong eyes." Ethan stared at the photo, then at his solar panels, and finally at the blank plot of land beside his garage. Ideas clicked. New blueprints started forming. This wasn't just about power. This was about control, and maybe it was time to take that control back. Ethan didn't sleep. The Polaroid sat beneath a desk lamp, flickering in soft yellow light, its edges curling like it had survived fire, or time, or both. He enlarged it on his monitor, ran filters, contrast shifts, even facial recognition. Nothing. The faces were too grainy, their smiles caught mid-wince. But the half-finished windmill in the background, yes, he could make out the base. Same lot, same dimensions as the empty patch beside his garage. He dug deeper. County permits, records, historical zoning archives, rejected construction proposals. And there it was. Permit application 1121 WM applicant. J&L Crowley status. Denied reason. Conflicts with community aesthetics. HOA veto override dated 2009. Just 2 months before the unexplained fire. The official reason? Atmospheric interference structure. Same term used in the mysterious section 14.2000 that had magically appeared in Ethan's HOA handbook. He pulled up the digital metadata again and ran a deeper trace. The document had been modified 5 times, but not by G. Vickers, the supposed treasurer. The real digital signature read, admin.upatc Raven. A ghost account. There was no HOA member listed with that email, not in any version. He printed everything and laid it out across his floor. The Crawleys, the vanished clause, the anonymous warnings, the drone footage, the strange flickers in his internet logs, and the fact that none of this had ever gone to vote. This wasn't just bad governance. It was a system designed to erase dissent. He decided to play dumb, on the surface. That morning, he showed up at the HOA office, housed inside a fake brick building behind the community park. The receptionist smiled, like her teeth were too tight in her mouth. "I'd like to request a variance form for my panels," he said, smoothly. "Name? Ethan Wolfe, 242 Sycamore Lane." She typed quickly. Her brow twitched. "You already have a file open. I'd still like the variance paperwork and the full list of HOA modifications logged over the last 5 years." Her fingers stopped moving. "That information is private, per Section 7.4 of the Charter. Community governance changes are public record. I'd like to inspect them." The silence hung longer this time. Finally, she slid a stack of papers across the desk. Too quickly. "Just these. That's all we have on file." Ethan took them calmly, smiled, and left. But in his car, he flipped through them and found something. That didn't belong. One sheet near the bottom with a handwritten note in shaky letters. "Not all of us agreed." They pushed it through. "Please don't let it happen again." At the bottom was a name. L. Feldman, board secretary. That night, Ethan got curious. He scanned his neighborhood via a drone, watching it buzz softly above rooftops. He wasn't just looking for oddities. He was watching for repetition, movement, loops, identical patterns, and he found one. Every 22 minutes, a black SUV drove past his street, sometimes with headlights, sometimes without. No plates, no stop. He played it back 3 times. Same angle, same distance, same vehicle, always 22 minutes apart. It wasn't surveillance, it was intimidation, but Ethan was done being intimidated. Then powered down the drone and opened his engineering files. He didn't just want a windmill anymore. He wanted a monument, something they couldn't ignore. He poured himself a coffee, opened his 3D modeling software, and began sketching. A multi-turbine, low-noise vertical windmill with built-in uplighting and a reflective outer casing. Hidden inside would be the real prize, a signal interceptor, something that could bounce encrypted data directly across mesh networks. The file name, Project Crowley. Spin back the silence. Ethan had to work in the silence between surveillance, loops. Every 22 minutes, the SUV rolled by. That gave him precisely 20 to dig, design, and hide his progress before the next slow crawl of tinted windows returned. And somewhere in those narrow minutes, under his garage floor, the world cracked open. It began with the trench for the windmill's power conduit. As he jackhammered a shallow groove, the blade struck something harder than soil. Metal. Not pipe. Not rock. He dug wider and cleared the dirt with his gloved hands until a rusted steel hatch emerged. Bolted and sealed. No markings. No handle. His breath clouded in the cool air. As he pried the edge open with a crowbar, it hissed as it gave way, hinges groaning like something exhaling after a long sleep. The crawl space beneath wasn't large, but it had been used. Recently or long ago, he couldn't tell. Dust lay untouched, but the air wasn't stale. There was a fold-out stool, a broken monitor, and a stack of locked filing boxes. One had been forced open, its papers long gone, but the others... He hauled out the two he could carry and sealed the hatch again before the SUV passed. Back inside, he opened them slowly, expecting spider nests or water-ruined junk. Instead, he found records, photos, maps, blueprints, a Whispering Pines planning document dated 2003, before the development was even finished, with notations in red pen. Test site viability confirmed. Energy independence risks HOA cohesion. Control must appear voluntary. Then something stranger. A map of the neighborhood with certain homes circled. Ethan's new address was one of them. Another circle was labeled Crawley, Failure. In bold red ink. The kicker? A windmill blueprint. Identical to the one Ethan had just started sketching. Same specs. Same 3-blade rotation. Same uplink hub embedded in the turbine's column. He stared at it, numb. The Crawleys hadn't just tried to build a windmill. They'd tried to do exactly what he was doing now, and they'd been erased for it. The next morning, Ethan laid out the lumber and vertical mast supports as innocently as possible. He logged the construction with the city, which, unlike the HOA, didn't care as long as it wasn't taller than 35 feet and met safety code. But within hours, the HOA emailed him again, this time with the subject line, "Immediate cessation required. Unauthorized structural assembly." There was no attached bylaw, no photo, no explanation, just a demand. Beneath it, a new threat. Repeat violations will trigger executive action per Section 9 emergency clauses. He hadn't seen Section 9 in any public charter. He replied once, "Cite legal precedent or cease contact." No reply ever came. That night, as he installed the internal wiring inside the base of the structure, the wind picked up. The blades began to turn, slow at first, then faster. The rotation activated a low hum, resonant and deep, as if the whole yard had a pulse. A few neighbors flicked their porch lights on, curious but not angry. Except for Grant. Across the street, Grant stood rigid on his porch, hands behind his back, watching the spinning turbine like it was desecrating holy ground. Ethan met his stare, without blinking, then slowly, deliberately, flipped a breaker. The windmill lit up with a soft golden glow from its internal LEDs, casting a halo into the night. Let them watch. This wasn't about stealth anymore. It was about exposure. The windmill didn't just spin. It sang. A deep harmonic vibration resonated through the ground, like a hidden note only certain ears could hear. And apparently, the HOA had excellent hearing. At 600 a.m. sharp, the third notice arrived. Not emailed, not mailed, but taped to the rotating blades of the turbine itself. Ethan found it flapping like a white flag, or a warning, held in place with surgical precision. Emergency action initiated. Construction must cease. Under Section 9.1, environmental subversion penalties will be enforced. He read it once, then again. Environmental subversion? What did that even mean? By 8 a.m., a white van with no plates and a mounted antenna parked just down the street. Two men in matching polos sat in the front, never looking at Ethan, but clearly not watching anything else. He went inside and turned on the microwave, just to drown out the hum in his walls. Not from the turbine, but from the signal, because something had changed. Ever since the windmill began spinning at full speed, the strange lag in Ethan's electronics was gone. The solar panels were transmitting real-time data again. His drone feeds no longer stuttered. His private server, offline for days, pinged back with a green light, and most importantly, the hidden network he'd embedded in the turbine's hub had gone live. It was receiving something. At first, he thought it was static, digital noise, but after running a few spectral decompositions, patterns emerged. Frequency pulses, encrypted ping sequences, repetitive but not random. Someone, something, was broadcasting inside Whispering Pines. The HOA wasn't just reacting to his energy setup. They were trying to suppress a signal. That afternoon, he tested a theory. He walked 3 streets down to the only other solar setup he'd seen in the entire community. It belonged to a family who kept to themselves. An older couple with a decorative fountain and a noticeable lack of HOA signage. He rang the bell. The man who opened the door looked cautious. When Ethan introduced himself, the man nodded once, like he'd been expecting it. "You got the turbine running," he said in a low voice. Ethan froze. "How did we hear it?" the man interrupted. "More importantly, they hear it." He invited Ethan inside. There, in a dimly lit study, sat a wall filled with analog radios, ham sets, signal analyzers, waveform displays. The room felt like a Cold War bunker. "I used to work in comms for defense," the man explained. "The HOA's interference, EM scramblers, local signal nullification, they're not civilian grade. That windmill of yours, it's poking holes in their firewall." Ethan stepped closer, watching one of the displays shift from red to green. The old man continued, "They're not just monitoring us, they're rerouting things. Community Wi-Fi, mobile signals. Your phone calls never leave the loop. They filter, rewrite, even delay responses. That's why the Crawleys failed. Their windmill wasn't strong enough." Ethan didn't ask how he knew about the Crawleys. He just asked, "Can you help me boost it?" The old man gave a slight smile. "Already working on it." By nightfall, Ethan's windmill pulsed with a new intensity. The lights glowed deeper, timed with signal bursts the old man had programmed. Across the neighborhood, porch lights flickered, security cams stuttered, and the white van disappeared. But something else happened too. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. No contact, no timestamp, just a sentence. "They're coming tonight. Shut it down, or lose more than signal." He stared at the message for a long moment, then, without breaking stride, he walked outside, crossed the lawn, and opened the turbines. Access panel. Inside he flipped a switch and brought the windmill to full power. The wind picked up right after sunset. It wasn't a natural wind. It howled too low, too sharp, like something trying to shake the foundations of more than just homes. Ethan stood in his yard as the turbine blades sliced through the air, humming with power. A faint electrical throb pulsed beneath his feet, as if the whole property were breathing in rhythm with the machine. Then the lights died. Not just his. The entire street went black. No porch lights. No hum of distant HVACs. Even the usual glow from the HOA security posts. Gone. The only light left was from the windmill itself. Its LEDs casting slow, deliberate pulses across the yard like a beacon. And then, the footsteps. Gravel shifted. Leaves crunched. Somewhere beyond his fence line, figures moved in the dark. He backed toward the house, calm but alert. His hand brushed the side of the turbine where the emergency toggle switch was hidden, just in case. But this wasn't the time to shut down. This was the test. 3 forms stepped into the edge of the light, all in black, faces covered. One held what looked like a signal scanner. Another carried a metal case, with antennae protruding. The third walked empty-handed, but wore a patch on their shoulder, the HOA crest, except not the usual one. This version had an eye in the center. They didn't say a word. The one with the scanner waved it at the turbine, then tapped something on a keypad. The windmill's lights dimmed slightly, but the blades kept spinning, unfazed. The signal interceptor was resisting their jamming. Ethan watched from his porch, with arms folded. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" No answer. They fanned out, one toward the base of the turbine, another toward the side of the house. The one with the patch stayed centered, staring. "You're trespassing." Ethan continued, louder. "This is private property. You're not HOA. You're not county. You're not anything." Still, no response. The first one reached the turbine and knelt to open the access panel, and that's when the trap triggered. Ethan's security system, hardened and firewalled, thanks to the retired radio engineer, recognized the signal intrusion as an override attempt. A high-pitched whine burst from a hidden speaker, and a spotlight burst to life above the turbine, pinning the intruder in blinding white. They staggered back, covering their ears. The others froze. Then a new sound split the night. Sirens, not HOA, not local patrol. This was a fire team siren. Volunteer squad, dispatched from the next town over. It shouldn't have been possible. HOA interference typically blocked external dispatch alerts. But the windmill had forced an uplink. It had pierced the neighborhood firewall, and someone had noticed. The black-clad figures scattered before the first red lights crested the hill. Ethan didn't move until the fire truck roared past. Headed toward a false emergency, the invaders had probably triggered. Elsewhere as a cover, it didn't matter. They knew he could call outside now. Back inside, Ethan checked the turbine system. The signal interceptor had logged over 600 new entries during the blackout. All time-stamped, all traceable. He ran a few of the stronger ones. Through the analyzer, most were encrypted packets labeled Echo Map, Dormant Sync, and Pulse Directive. One, however, stood out. It was marked Crawley.02. Failsafe log. It contained an image, the Crawley's windmill, moments before it burned, and a second image, a satellite map with a glowing dot directly over his house. Then, a final line of text. "If the wind rises twice, let it burn thrice." Ethan leaned, back in his chair, breath caught in his chest. The HOA wasn't just suppressing energy tech. They were suppressing knowledge. Network breaches, communications across frequencies no residential zone should monitor. And now, he had their files. He'd just become the biggest threat they'd ever faced. And they were coming again. Only next time, they wouldn't knock. Ethan didn't sleep. He couldn't. The moment that second image loaded, his house lit like a bullseye on some long-dormant satellite interface. It was clear. This was no longer about code violations or bylaws. This was something designed to erase whoever got too close to the truth. By dawn, he had extracted everything from the intercepted packets. Schematics of underground data nodes buried beneath whispering pines. Decommissioned telecom towers marked for signal bleed, and, at the core, Whisper Protocol. That's what they were guarding. It wasn't just a cute name for the development. It was the project name for a pilot initiative in controlled suburban network environments. Systems that could isolate neighborhoods under the guise of community internet, security upgrades, HOA maintained infrastructure. According to the documents, Whisper Protocol was supposed to test mass behavioral nudging, through environmental controls. Light, temperature, internet access, even traffic flow. Phase Y had succeeded. Phase 2 had failed when the Crawleys tried to expose it. And now, Phase 3 had begun. With Ethan, the next step had to be more than resistance. It had to be broadcast. He knew that if he could boost the turbine signal through the dormant tower near the old storm drain access point, circled in red on the leaked blueprints, he could send a data dump straight to county servers, bypassing the HOA's internal loop. But he'd need help. He returned to the old ham operator, Feldman. The man didn't answer the door, with a smile this time. He looked shaken. "They came to my house last night," he said, before Ethan could speak. "Didn't break in, just stood on the lawn, holding pictures of me, inside my own house." Ethan showed him the Crawley failsafe file. "They'll do more than watch. I'm sending everything out, but I need amplification through the fallback relay tower. The one on the old drain tunnel." Feldman hesitated. "They decommissioned it for a reason." "No," Ethan said. "They buried it for a reason." That night, under moonlight and turbine glow, Ethan and Feldman hiked down past the dry creek bed, slipping through an old access gate long since rusted open. The storm drain still reeked of mold and decay. But farther in, where the concrete walls changed texture, metal rungs led upward. At the top, sealed under decades of vines and debris, was the old maintenance hatch. It opened with effort. Behind it, the base of the relay tower, marked with the same HOA crest. This one etched directly into the frame. Eye and all. They connected Feldman's modified transmitter to the turbine's live relay feed. The hum rose immediately. Strong, aggressive. The windmill wasn't just transmitting now. It was reaching. Feldman toggled the manual override, flipped a final switch, and nodded. Ethan inserted the drive, the entire failsafe package, the Crawley, files, intercepted signals, HOA manipulations, whisper protocol diagrams, poured through the uplink in a single burst. For 23 seconds, Ethan's turbine became a lighthouse of truth. But then, silence. The relay screen blinked once, then flatlined. Feldman checked the gauges. "We sent it. They'll have to act now." Ethan stared up through the tower grates. Then he saw it. Across the trees, smoke was rising, back near his home. Not wisps, a column. They sprinted. By the time they reached the street, the sky was orange. The fire wasn't just near the windmill. It was targeted. A perfect circle of flames had engulfed the turbine, but hadn't touched the house. The blades spun wildly, silhouetted against the inferno, and then, one snapped. It didn't fall. It launched, straight into the HOA flagpole across the street, splitting the logoed emblem in two. Ethan stood in the heat, watching as water trucks pulled in and neighbors emerged. Someone, finally, spoke. It was Grant stepping from his porch, eyes hollow. He said just one thing. They burned the Crawleys too. The blade embedded in the HOA flagpole didn't budge for 3 days. Neighbors walked their dogs past it in silence. The board never addressed it. The HOA newsletter, normally flooded with passive-aggressive reminders about acceptable mailbox colors, skipped that week entirely. No mention of the turbine, no mention of the fire, but the damage had already spread, further than they realized, because someone did receive Ethan's transmission. The first to arrive wasn't from the HOA, nor county code enforcement. It was a woman in a grey field coat with no insignia. Her car unmarked but government grade. She didn't knock, just waited on the porch, sipping coffee from a thermos Ethan didn't recognize as his. "Nice windmill," she said when he opened the door. He didn't invite her in, but she walked past him anyway. "Whisper protocols. Been off book for 10 years," she said casually, settling at the kitchen table. "We let it run because it was contained. No casualties in Phase 1. Phase 2 got messy, but we spun it. But you made noise." He folded his arms. "So what are you? NSA? Doe? Sheol Black Ops?" She smirked. "Cute." "I'm from the division that handles recovery." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "From me." "From them." She slid a drive across the table. "Everything you sent, cleaned, sanitized. You're going to publish it." He blinked. "What?" "You're a homeowner in a deranged HOA. That's the story. Make it viral. A David and Goliath energy struggle. Windmill versus bureaucracy. Paint them like idiots, not operatives. If people laugh at them, they won't look deeper." He stared at her, suspicion growing. "What's the catch?" "You become a folk hero, and we stay in the shadows. And if I say no?" She finished her coffee and stood. "Then a gas leak. We'll take out the entire cul-de-sac next week. Your choice." She walked out without waiting for an answer. 2 days later, Ethan posted a full write-up titled, "The HOA burned my windmill. So, I turned the whole neighborhood against them." He used photos, schematics, sanitized data, left out the worst parts, framed it as satire, a cautionary tale about energy independence and tyrannical neighborhoods. The post exploded. Within hours, it made the front page of 3 news sites. By the end of the week, Ethan was on 2 podcasts and a national morning show, grinning as he told the story of Grant the HOA stooge, fireproof bylaws, and burning blades of justice. No one asked about the tower. No one dug into Whisper protocol, not even the feds, because publicly it didn't exist. But behind closed doors, something changed. Other residents in other neighborhoods began poking holes in their own HOAs. Woman in Arizona exposed a weird Wi-Fi monitoring program. A man in Florida posted footage of what looked like drones, camouflaged as power boxes. An ex-employee leaked photos of Whisper-branded hardware being dismantled in a warehouse in Kansas. Ethan didn't start a war. He unleashed a reckoning, one final thing. 3 weeks after the fire, the burned-out shell of the turbine still stood, charred but intact, until one night it was gone. No truck, no sound, no witness. In its place, standing silently in the middle of Ethan's yard, was a new turbine, sleek, taller, with black blades. On its base, a plaque had been welded in clean brass to the wind that would not bend. Phase the farce, he stood there, in the morning light, staring at the silent sentinel, uncertain if it was a warning, a gift, or an invitation, and behind him, deep under the soil, the uplink blinked back to life. Again,